Afternoon, evening, morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let us start the afternoon session. And without much further ado, I will hand it over to our chair, Henriette Esterhuizen.
Hybrid meeting. Here it is. Thanks. Thanks for that, Shangatai. Henriette Esterhuizen here, MAG Chair for the record, and we are starting the final segment of the third open consultation and MAG meeting. So welcome back, everyone, from your meal breaks. I know some of you had dinner, some of you had lunch. We this afternoon we'll be looking at the main session proposals, and the MAG members will present them, and we'll then look at capturing outputs for IGF 2021. And finally, we'll just do an overview of the intersessional activities and their proposals for main sessions. In fact, we probably should do capturing outputs right at the end, after all the session proposals have been discussed. So Serena and Wim, you'll be our final presenters of the day, and you'll make everything feel coherent, strategic, outcome-oriented, with clear outputs. But just to close on our discussion prior to the meal break, I'm very happy to hear that Wayman Kwok from UNDESA is online with us and can contribute to that discussion that we had about the interaction and communications between the IGF and the UN Secretary General. So Wyman, thanks very much for being with us, and you have the floor.
Hi, Andre. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Wyman.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I would just like to quickly react, and I wanted to intervene earlier, but I know that it was close to lunchtime and it's a long meeting. So greetings to all MAG members and others colleagues here. I'm Wai-Ming Kwok from UNDESA. I like to respond and apologize. I'm not able to listen carefully to all the points. I could still be half asleep when I was listening. But on some intervention, especially those discussed at the last session about the communication of the Secretary General, like all other past annual meeting of the IGF, the communication we always go through the Department of Global Communication, DGC of the United Nations, and we have a colleague there who will help us with the communication to coordinate at the system level, including at the Secretary General office. So likewise, we look forward to work with them on that. On specific, like talking point for the Secretary General, we have been including when there's opportunity for senior officials, including the Secretary General, including the Deputy Secretary General, and of course our Under Secretary General. So just to give an example, last week, that was during the general debates, we had I was the note taker for a meeting between ESG's Pasar Sano, who is also the OIC of Tech Envoy Office. She met with one country and they asked about cybersecurity, and we referred to the work of the Best Practice Forum on Cybersecurity. So we should do more of that, and we'll continue to do that. One other point in terms of linking to the intergovernmental work at the United Nations, as you know, every year, the IGF is also being considered by the second committee of the General Assembly. There's one specific resolution on ICT for sustainable development. Normally, this year they will consider the draft that is being first discussed at ECOSOC and earlier through CSDD. So the final every year will be through the second committee resolution. The facilitator for this year is the delegate from Mexico and Singapore. So we are in touch with them, and we will see. I'm sure that every year there will be reference mix to IGF. So in addition to the existing text, we will see whether we can include some new text, including from the Twitter Common Agenda. So speaking of which, my last point on the Secretary General Common Agenda, and I think Adam and earlier our IGF Secretariat colleague Sanya also shared the text. There's two paragraphs in particular will be very relevant for IGF and the advice of MEC, the paragraph 92 and paragraph 93. Paragraph 93, there is actually this reference for IGF to adapt, innovate, and reform. That if we put these three together, that's the acronym of AIR. So it's like IGF need a breath of fresh air. So we invite this, and we actually intend, UNDESA, we intend to organize kind of like an expert discussion, similar to what we did in 2016 of the IGF retreat. We are thinking of when we can put this expert discussion together, and I'm sure we will get to the advice of MEC, both this the current MEC and also past MEC members. I will stop here for now. Back to you, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that, Wyman. And it's, I think that I think it's really, what is important about your contribution is that I think it both exposes the MAG both to what the opportunities are and what the existing channels are, as well as an understanding that there are channels and that they are complex, and that but you have to follow those channels. And it's not always a simple process, but that there is already a lot of effort that is going into following those channels. Does anyone have any questions for Wyman? Adam, I'm not sure if you're with us already, if you had any responses or further questions on this. And Shengatai, please go ahead and add.
Wyman just reminded me, as well as part of the communication efforts last year, and I think also the previous year, both of us and the USG as well attended the press briefings, the noon press briefings that are held in New York by the Secretary General's office. And we did push the IGF, and we updated the journalists that are assigned to the UN there about the IGF and the IGF annual meeting. So I think we'll be able to do that as well again this year.
Wyman, I do have a slight follow-up question for you and for Shengatai as well. I mean, that was dealing with the Secretary General. In terms of interagency communications, the IGF was always a very active participant in UNGAS, the UN Group on the Information Society. But it seems to me, from my perspective, that somehow since the digital cooperation process has started, that UNGAS is not quite as active as it used to be. Or is that process still there, and is it one that the IGF can also use to communicate with other UN agencies?
Thanks, Andre. UNGAS is still there. As you know, UNGAS is there's rotating chair, but is also being, I would say, ITU and UNTAC, they take more of a coordinating role. I would say that these different mechanisms, they are still finding grounds to see how they could complement each other. And we in DESA, through our colleague Dennis Sousa, we are always involved in the UNGAS process, and we always include the work of IGF. On connecting with all the UN agencies, one thing I like to add is that we have since invited I think a list of 30 over UN agencies, similar to the approach that we did for IGF 2020. We have received confirmation, quite a number of confirmations. In fact, I believe Anora and other colleagues, we are going to reach out to some of the session organizers, including the main sessions, to suggest some will be at the head of agency level, some could be the deputy or delegated to participate as the panelists for the related main sessions. At the same time, we are also planning to have a interagency dialogue among the UN agencies. You'll be open to all participants of the IGF in Katowice, of course. to discuss about the interagency collaboration in IGF, and also as a means of a response to the Secretary General Common Agenda. One point, Henriette, I like to add is that I also just we send a response to President after his intervention. We are working to have a joint briefing to delegates of the missions to the United Nations, missions both in New York and Geneva, a joint virtual session. Maybe we can do that in end of October to brief all delegates about what to expect of the upcoming IGF in Katowice. Back to you, Chair.
Oh, sorry, I had my mic
yeah.
disabled.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Wyman. I said that's a really good idea. And I think also just draw on the existing partnership with the Diplo Foundation's Geneva Internet platform. They've always also played a very useful role in reaching particularly the Geneva missions. Adam, please go ahead. You've asked for the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Henriette. Adam Peake for the record. Wyman, thank you for those comments. It's really helpful. You know, and I think we trust you on the communication. I think you know that this is an important issue, and the MAG will be supportive as we can be. On the common agenda, thanks for reminding us also about paragraph 92. I mean, the problems we have with discrimination and generally aggressive treatment of people online is very well worth noting, and it actually came up in the parliamentarian session, the preparatory session we held with parliamentarians a couple of weeks ago, that it makes democratic discourse for parliamentarians and their communities and their constituencies very difficult. So yet another relevant example of that, and I think that's helpful. On paragraph 93, yes, thank you. As we mentioned yesterday, this seems to be a new issue that would be important to bring into probably the emerging digital cooperation session. It gives us an impetus to think about the roadmap and take that forward in a broader and new way. So I think that's helpful. I don't know if everybody agrees, but I hope we will see that. So yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Wyman. You will probably hear that the main session on digital cooperation is planning to focus, as far as I understand, on the common agenda. But that would complement more of an open forum type session where UN agencies do a briefing. So I think the two sessions would complement one another really well. Thank you, Wyman and Adam, for contributing to that. And let's move back to the agenda. And we will now have the MAG members, the MAG member-led issue teams present their proposals for the main sessions. As I said before the break, I would ask the presenters to share their screens, and we'll go through them in the order of whoever is ready to present. I don't want to propose the order like I did yesterday. That was very confusing. But any one of you, let's start with the people that are here in the room. Anyone? I'm Rita. Please go ahead, and you'll be presenting trust, security, and stability, correct? Please go ahead. Let us know if you need any help, but you should be able to share your screen.
Yes, that's what I'm kind of trying to do. No, it's not enabled. Okay, I can speak for the benefit and I will post it in the chat. I'll post it in the chat. So I'll not waste.
Amrita, just hang on a second. Let's try and sort it out so that everyone else. Okay, good.
It's disabled. So that's okay. I guess I've shared it in the chat. The only differences which we are having. This is from the Trust and Security Working Group. Yeah.
I would like I'd like the proposal to be on screen for everyone to see. I can share my screen if that would help.
That will help. Thank you, Henriette. So we had some differences from what we were discussing yesterday. We have 7 title options given to us for the session. We still have to choose the appropriate one, and in case any of you feel, you can always share. No worries. I can share, I think, at this. Yes, it's. Yeah. So we've got a number of title suggestions now. We have to choose which one. We don't know the date yet when we have to have the session. It's a 90-minute session. And as I said yesterday, the session would first provide a summary of the preparatory session. This will include trying to map the inputs which we received during the session and share a map of the cyber security situation, which includes how the community perceives the various and prioritizes threat, identifies measures and instruments and stakeholders that are present, that can be addressed at this point of time, and issues or threats which possibly have no measures or instruments at this point of time, and what needs to be done. It would then highlight the main trends and use cases from select communities, and then it will be followed by an open discussion where speakers would share their take on the main trends, highlight the different approaches, share what measures are required, discuss what can be the role of different stakeholders, and what can be the role of IGF. And lastly, there would be an audience interaction, and the key takeaways would be summarized in the session. The policy questions which we are looking at, it may be more, but these were certain things which we came up, is what are the cybersecurity practices and mechanisms? How can we ensure a safe digital space? What are the current international standards available? What should be the role of roles and responsibilities of stakeholders in protecting against cyber attack? What should be the framework of international rules and state accountability? And what should be the accountability of private sector? So if we look at the draft agenda, we have an initial opening of 5 minutes, a summary of the preparatory session, which is for 10 minutes. A speaker would be sharing on the main trends. 10 minutes, there would be use cases. One would be from a youth organization that is working on these issues, and the other one is to have perhaps a journalist or someone who has worked on breach to come and share their perspective. Then we would have an open discussion for 35 minutes where the speakers would be highlighting their own perspective on the main trends or different approaches and measures, and what could be the role of IGF, followed by audience interaction for 20 minutes and summarizing the session. So the suggested name for a session moderator is Chris Despain, because he would be there at Katowice. We've not yet zeroed on as to who would be sharing the summary from the preparatory session, but definitely one of the speakers. For the main trends, we have the name of the French ambassador for foreign affairs. This is a suggestion. We can look at others. The reason for this speaker is because he has been involved in the Christchurch call and the Paris call. For the case studies, we have Josephine from Hate Aid, which is a youth engagement initiative from Germany. There have been suggestions for the other journalist option from Reporters Without Border or Amnesty International, or even from Forbidden Stories, which was shared yesterday. For open discussion, we have some suggestions in terms of speaker from ANSI or NCISA. We have a confirmed speaker from Kaspersky, a suggestion of Lata Reddy from India, Chris Gibson, which came yesterday from First TC. There was a suggestion which came in from the Pacific Islands. And then we have a suggestion of Priya Chetty from South Africa, Melody Musoni from South Africa, Renee Summer from Ericsson, and another speaker, Enrico Caladro from Africa. We've reached out to contacts in China and others for certain names. We've not finalized because, we want to see the names, and perhaps we may also take someone from the preparatory phase also. The rapporteurs need to be, we would have 2 rapporteurs. We have to still finalize. In terms of interaction, it is mostly on chats, questions, perhaps use a menti.com or something. Lucien and I am the facilitator from MAG. And possibly the next steps which we look at is connecting with potential speakers and brief them on our requirements, and if possible, if they can, if they have the time and can come and attend the preparatory session, it would help them to also, prepare better. And in terms of SDG links, we are looking at goal 16 for promoting just, peaceful, and inclusive society. So that's all from me. We are open to questions. Lucien, if you want to add something.
Thank you, Henrietta. It was an excellent summary of the work, which was a collective effort and which is still ongoing. We are to reach to speaker, and thank you.
Thanks very much to Amrita and Lucien and everyone else who contributed to that. I've checked in with Shanghai, and the deadline for finalizing these proposals has to be 2 weeks from now. So we're talking about Friday, 15 October, and that includes speakers. Of course, with an understanding that you might change some of the speakers at a later stage, but that would be a finalized proposal that can then be added to the schedule and used for the purpose of promoting the IGF. So thanks very much to that. Any comments or questions from others on the proposal from the issue team on trust, security, and stability? Because we can't necessarily see the speaking queue right now, feel free, those of you that are with us virtually, to indicate in the chat that you want to ask a question or make a comment. I don't see anyone. Amrita, Lucien, others in that group, do you need help with anything? Is there any aspect of your proposal or your session organizing process that you would like assistance with?
Perhaps, the speakers which we choose, Henriette, in case there are some other better, as in I would not say more appropriate options, and the Secretariat feels, or even anyone else feels, you are free to let us know, as in we are open to it.
Thanks. And I think my only comment, and I suspect I'll probably make this comment again, is that just be careful not to try to cover too much in your main session. A session that is, there's a general goal in the IGF. Part of what the IGF is trying to achieve this year is fewer issues, deeper discussion. So just keep that at the back of your minds when you plan that, because you are adding quite a lot to it. So you might want to, before you completely finalize that, just think through it through that fewer issues, deeper discussion lens. But congratulations, thanks very much. And Ben Wallace is in the speaking queue. Ben, please go ahead.
Hello, lovely to see everybody. I'm with Microsoft. I'm a former MAG member. I don't know if it's possible to put the proposal up on the screen. It's not too important. I had a couple of of comments. One to your comment there, Henriette, about not trying to do too much. I noticed in the list of potential issues something about a trusted digital space. Can't remember exactly what it was, or safe space. So I just wanted to point out, I think, around the digital safety issues, it looks like the emerging regulation, how to ensure a safe digital space. It looks like the emerging regulation session is interested to look at content moderation. So that's probably something that does not need to be covered by the trust session. I'm not sure exactly what you were thinking in terms of a safe digital space, but when it comes to content moderation, it seems that's something you can maybe set to one side and let the other main session look at. And then just in terms of speakers, I wondered, it's obviously interesting to have individual stakeholders. I wonder if it's also interesting to have some groupings who might be able to represent a kind of broader perspective. I'm thinking in terms of groups like the Cyber Peace Institute, which I think would probably be, I'm not sure if that would be a non-profit civil society or an international organization, or I'm not sure what. The Cyber Peace Institute and the Cyber Tech Accord, which is a business grouping. There are a couple of groups who might be able to represent stakeholders from more globally than a particular country, in case that's interesting. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben. Any reactions from
Yes.
I see Amrita nodding, Ben.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Ben, in terms of one, we should not overlap issues, and two is, the suggestions you've given of, the people whom we can reach out to is very welcome, and those are the kind of things which actually help. And in terms of issues, in the preparatory phase, we have identified it into 4 groups. I'll just try to take out that, and we want to keep the discussion related to that itself. Lucien, are you able to get into the initial document which we had? So we had looked at it in 4 major groups. I think it was cyber norms, it was cyber security, and 2 more. So we would want to stick to that. I'll send it to you on chat. I won't take others' time, but I'll send it to you over chat. Thanks.
Thanks very much. And just, I think for this group, but for all the other groups as well, you have the links. You can add your comments and your suggestions to the Google Docs themselves, but I suggest you also mail these proposals to the issue team lists, proposals for speakers and for modifications. And in this case, the point about not focusing on content regulation if one of the other main sessions are focusing. Thanks a lot for that. And I see Chemek is with us. Welcome, Chemek. I'm not sure if Christoph is with us at the moment, but welcome to have our co-chairs represented. Who is ready to present next? Timea, so that would be emerging regulation issue team, and Roman will complement that, I'm sure. So please go ahead, Timea.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone, online and off. Great to connect with you again around this main session. I have to say that we did have quite a vigorous conversation all throughout yesterday afternoon and evening and this morning and throughout the day, and that still seems to be going on. So I will present where we stand right now and ask you all to intervene to help us further refine our session.
Can you share your screen?
I'll try. Just 1 second, please. can you see this? Yep, perfect. Great. Okay, so
Yes,
let's
we can see.
up here. Thank you. So in order to start off why this session and what we want to do with this session, we did try to accommodate first and foremost the input that we received from the community back from the beginning of this year when we started to talk about this session and about emerging regulation within the IGF. I know that...
Tabea, sorry. Could you perhaps increase your document, zoom your document a little bit so we can see better?
Trying to do that.
Yes,
Better?
much better. Thank you.
There we go. So why this session and what we wanted to do with this session was to accommodate the input that we received from the community around emerging regulation and to see how the recent conversations around the globe on regulation and digital technologies are going forward. Now, I have to underline here that we do have quite a bit of interest in this session and quite a bit of different ideas on what regulations and emerging regulations are and the topics of interest for various communities and around the globe. So it's very difficult to fit that all into a 90-minute session. We tried our best. We also wanted to make sure that we don't overlap with what's going on in other sessions and in high-level sessions as well. And of course, we wanted to make sure that we consider perspectives that are global and that are that reflect takeaways, best practices, common learnings that we can all move forward with. So the group has discussed a couple of different approaches to a main session, and a lot of the commonalities that came forward from our discussions were around how to approach regulation in a way that it is helpful to preserving the common, open, interoperable, and interconnected nature of the Internet. The question that most of us raised in our conversation was, is regulation helping us preserve this nature of the Internet, or is regulation posing, in some instances, barriers to that? So this is why we chose the title Regulation and the Open, Interoperable, and Interconnected Internet, Challenges and Approaches. We are planning, as I said, a 90-minute session. We'll see the date together with everyone once we are ready to schedule main sessions. And our objective, as I said, with the session is to think about regulation and how it affects this global interoperable nature of the Internet. We wanted to make sure that we look at issues that regulators and other stakeholders around the globe are considering and not single out specific stakeholder groups or regions or countries of the world and their unilateral or one-sided approaches, but really to think about what are the issues here that many of us are thinking about that need to be regulated. So this was why we came up with the idea of looking at not more than 3 main topics in this session, and to think about how regulation is affecting the Internet in various different layers or perspectives. So we thought that we look at the issue of infrastructure, data, and content first, but I see that many of us still have very different ideas around what are these 3 topics that we are going to discuss. So there are other options on the table as far as I can see. So option A was infrastructure, data, and content. Another option I see is data, content, and artificial intelligence. There were suggestions to include cybersecurity in there, so that could be, I guess, cybersecurity, data, and content, as well as an approach to frame the issues around a little bit differently around perhaps digital trade, data security and privacy, and content. So these were the various issues that have come up There are also some transversal cross-cutting considerations that we want to include, whatever the three main issues that we select. And these cross-cutting considerations are issues around market structure, competition, and market behavior. Other one is consumer protection, and the third cross-cutting issue is, as I mentioned, are regulations moving forward or backward the interoperable nature of the internet. So this is where we are at the moment. We are thinking about moderators and speakers. All of this is still in draft form. We have very many ideas that we still need to decide on. It was mentioned that we invite Jovan Jovan Korbalia from the Diplo Foundation as the moderator, because he will be also moderating our prep session, so that could possibly have some continuity. Then, of course, there are a number of suggestions to include prominent scholars on this topic, to include prominent speakers, and of course, we would want to link up with the conversations that the parliamentarian track is having, and to include representatives from national parliaments as well, or somebody from the parliamentarian track who I know are also considering some of these issues. So I don't know if I mentioned everything, but I'm sure my colleagues here in the room and online will have things to add. So I'll stop here and happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thanks for that, Tamia. Roma, do you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Tamia. Thank you, everyone who contributed so far, and for today morning session with Tamia and Amrita, when we finalized what was on the table. But you see, the email didn't go through at 10 a.m. and people received this updated draft a bit later. That is why there are some comments which we also just see right now, and I believe that we need some more time to finalize these issue tracks, and of course speakers, because I think that maybe one or two people just proposed speakers so far. So, and we definitely need to ensure the diversity of the regions, stakeholder groups, ages, and all other forms of diversity, which also can be in the context of sharing those best practices, which we wanted the session to be like more about. I don't know if it's clear from the description which we propose, but yeah, again, the idea is not to blame anyone or do something like this, but to show what good is on the table globally and how it all can be used for the sake of good and prosperous internet for all of us. So no less than that. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Roman. Adam, Susan, Rita, Maria Paz, anyone else in this group? Would you like to contribute?
Amrita here, Henriette.
Go ahead, Amrita.
I think more or less we are agreed on most of the issues. We are agreed on most of the issues, that we would take one or two or maximum three issues, discuss it, and as in we would be discussing what the issue is, what are the regulations or best practices, and what can happen. So I think we are, no, my audio is disabled.
Yes, your mobile device.
So I think we are agreed on those. We perhaps need to work on a bit of nitty-gritties as to who could be the speakers, etc. And some of the comments we have to include. So as you said, perhaps we just need the tiny changes we need to make in terms of getting it into shape. But we are more or less agreed on certain points.
Thanks, Amrita. Susan, are you with us? Do you want it? Or Adam, I know you were part of the discussion. Would you like to comment?
No, I'm sorry.
No. Susan, and you?
Hi, Henriette. Yes. Just a note to say, I think it's important that we regulatory examples and issue areas. I think that can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I think that what has been proposed here is a really good way forward. The regulatory examples for data, content, and AI give us plenty of options to look at approaches by different just different approaches, but whoever I guess we choose to speak or invite to speak. I have noted in the Google Doc that we cannot, that focusing on critical internet infrastructure in general, it's not an example of regulation. So it does not fit. We have we've got apples and we have an orange. For the sake of consistency, we need to just have all apples, if you will. So that is my only comment at this time. Thank you.
Hi, it's Adam. I don't know if you can hear me, but perhaps waiting for Henriette to jump back in. And I agree completely with Susan's comment there. And Timea, I think, introduced a very fair assessment of where our discussion's gone. Looking at the chat, Nigel, thank you for your suggestions. That's helpful. And we will talk more about the regulatory examples. I think one of the intents of the session, and I think we've mentioned this a number of times, is that legislations are being developed around the world. This is not a fixed target, as it were. It's not a fixed issue. So there is an opportunity here, I think, for the IGF to continue a discussion in some form after the main session so that we can provide that opportunity as the multi-stakeholder forum for dialogue to have an input into some of the drafting processes and discussions that go on, or that input being perhaps in terms of principles or broad thoughts and so on. Anyway, thank you very much, and thank you, Timea, for introducing this for us.
Thank you, Adam, and thanks to this group. So you have time to go and complete your session proposal and your proposal for speakers. Do not be shy of having debate. I think that we've already seen in the comments in the chat that people are suggesting looking at the UK, looking at France. I think sometimes you do need to look at, while we do not have a name and shame approach in the IGF, and we are, the IGF, we are respectful of individual countries, sometimes we do have to look at specific examples and approach them from what works and what doesn't work towards an open, inclusive internet that respects human rights. So, in a sense, what I'm trying to say to you is this is a topic that could generate very exciting debate. Don't shy away from debate. Debate is important and debate is interesting and it attracts people to the IGF. As long as that debate is conducted in a way that is informative and respectful. So I think we should leave it with you and we'll see what you come up with. And you don't have a lot of time, but you have enough time. So, and thanks to all of you for working through this and contributing. Shall we move on? Timea, go ahead.
Just a really quick question about our deadline, if you can reconfirm that, please.
Deadline is 15 October, and that has to include speakers as well, even if you might make some changes at a later stage, and moderators. And again, I think I know you've got the 3 areas, it looks good, it works well. But again, especially if you're going to have intensive debate, you're going to have to be careful. I think on the one hand, if it's a very abstract debate about regulation as an enabler, regulation as a fragmenter, that could work. But if you are trying to do justice to all the specific issue areas you've got, it might become difficult to have really exciting debate. So just be careful again about not trying to cover too much. It's not a workshop, it's a main session. So try for that. Thanks to that group. Giacomo and Raquel, you are in the room, so if you don't mind, can I call on universal access and meaningful connectivity? Giacomo, are you ready? Who's presenting? Roberto.
Andrea, I'm able to present.
Perfect. Go ahead, Susan. Susan, are you able to share your screen?
I am not. It's a security issue. I'm on a government device. So I hope you understand.
I will ask one of your colleagues to share the screen. So, Roberto, are you able to share your screen for universal access, or Giacomo? Raquel is. Thank you very much, Raquel. Susan, Raquel will bring up the proposal on the screen, and you can go ahead. You can start with your intro remarks.
So much. Thank you for help. So the Universal Access and Meaningful Connectivity issue team has been working for some time, not only on the press session, but I'd say deliberations have definitely sped up recently for the main session. And there was an agreement on selecting multilingualism on the internet as a specific topic within this UAMC main theme. I should also note that during the IGF 2021, there will also be a session that is organized by the Policy Network on Meaningful Access. So I think we all can appreciate, like all of these issue areas, the breadth of different subtopics within each issue track. So multilingualism for the main session will be complemented, fortunately, by those other issue areas in the UAMC track during the PNMA session. So this session will enable us to focus in on how to help advance the multilingual internet. And though we are in mid-discussion, and I'm not sure if our colleague CA is online, but we had a discussion last night amongst folks who were in Geneva, and I dialed in, and we coalesced around the idea of a multilingualism session that focuses on the interplay of the importance of developing local content and content in local languages, and the importance of universal acceptance, the technical foundation or meaning, convey that local content. So in other words, if you have local content that's developed in a specific language, and let's say it's developed in a non-ASCII script or a language that is based on a script that's other than Latin characters, then you need universal acceptance to be able to convey that in the same different script or non-Latin characters. So it will be a dance between these two different topics. There have been some suggestions which, owing to the hybrid nature of this MAG meeting, have been unable to sit down with Giacomo and some others to fully resolve these suggestions. there. But I think that generally speaking, there's rough consensus around this format to hone in on local content and universal acceptance. And so we, as you'll see, have our rough draft in terms of the session agenda. However, I think the session description, which, if Raquel, you wouldn't mind zooming up a little bit, there we go, is pretty much agreed. And this is, I'll just read this. So the brief description and objective is the following. The ability of internet users to engage online in their own language is a key element of meaningful universal connectivity. Building upon previous work at the IGF, including the Best Practice Forum on Local Content, as well as the ongoing work of the Policy Network on Meaningful Access, this main session will explore the role of local content development and universal acceptance of domain names as key drivers for a multilingual internet. And so that is where we are, Chair, and very happy to answer any questions that anybody may have and to enter into discussion. It would be great to hear people's ideas.
Thank you very much, Susan. And you're getting positive comments in the chat. Nigel Hexon is saying there could be a link between this and the new policy work in ICANN on increasing the scope of international domain names. And Carlos Afonso is also online. And Giacomo, and I think you must be very happy to see the link between the session proposal and the work of the Best Practice Forum on local content and language diversity. Does anybody want to add to Susan's presentation? Are there any questions or comments?
Yes, I have Carlos here for the record.
Carlos Afonso, and then after you it will be Roberto. Go ahead, Carlos.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I am very happy with that, and we are trying our best to find speakers and to correspond to the expectations, of course. Very good. Very good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. Roberto.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you also, Susan, that did a good presentation about what we are intending to do. I would only like to add that it was a very interesting the possibility to get, as I mentioned it yesterday, to have these two sessions, which are very linked, the PNMA session that will come first, and after that, after a break of 3 minutes, we will be able to have this main session. And it will be also important to include, that's something that perhaps we're going to discuss in the following days, to include this concrete linkage between those two sessions at the beginning of the second one, at the beginning of this main session, because as we are looking at it, it is a very important and concrete theme that we're going to talk about during this session, but it is also important to do this following up that I mentioned yesterday, between all the previous work that has been done, and in a way that we can actually see, because if we remember the session last year, actually there were several policy proposals that were mentioned by the different panelists. So it would be good to know which one of those proposals were actually executed during this last year. It would be good. And again, it will be some very good approach to make this linkage between the two sessions. Thank you very much.
Well, you could use that, I suppose, if you brief your moderator and your speakers to prepare to respond to some of those specific or comment on those proposals. You can actually achieve that. So, as I asked earlier, and do you need any specific help? Any requests at this point that you need? I didn't ask that from the previous group, but because I think they still need to go back and do more work. But do you need any help from the MAG or the Secretariat at this point? Susan?
I think we can reach out if we're having challenges in finding speakers. I did see an email come through from our colleague Eleonora on some speakers that may be available. The Secretariat may be able to facilitate connections, so perhaps we can explore that later. But given that we are engaging with a number of people from the PNMA who work in this area, I don't have any concerns at this point that we will not be able to engage speakers, but I'm always keen to hear what others think on that.
Thanks for that, Susan. And thanks to Raquel also for supporting this process. Okay, I see no further comments or questions. Shall we move on to the next? And Juliana, if you don't mind, I'm looking at you. You're sitting there right in front of me. Can you take us through environment and climate change? While Juliana is sharing her screen, can you share your screen?
Yeah, I try to share the screen.
Who will be next? Can I check so that we can move on to the next proposal? Who's presenting economic and social inclusion? Afi, so will you be able to go next after Juliana? Juliana, I see Afi's just shared her screen.
Okay, I think if Afi is...
So she can go first.
Yeah, Afi can go first.
So Afi, you go ahead with economic and social inclusion and human rights. And Secretariat, can one of you just go and check in with, maybe not right now, but with Juliana to help her to share her screen. Thanks. Afi, please go ahead.
Okay. Afi Edo here for record. Okay. Afi Edo here for the record. I'm presenting the main session on economy and social inclusion and human rights. According to the draft of the calendar, you have it on the 10th of December. It will be 90-minute session, and the topic that are related is economic and social inclusion, innovation, human rights, and digital technology. In this document, we have a brief description of the topic and our objective. As for the police question that we'll be discussing, there will be like the raising of significance of inclusion and human rights in social debates and public awareness, the new risks that have emerged since the pandemic, and how can the use of technology offer new opportunity for the positive change, and also the role of IGF to promote economic and social inclusion and human rights. And the session calendar, you have an introduction session remarked by the moderator, 5 minutes, and the first block of discussion, which will be the trend, the new opportunity, and risk. A short input talk for the 4 speakers or panelists, And the second block will be the discussion of government and strategy to promote inclusion and human rights, including the role of IGF. And finally, discussion among the audience and panelists. And at the end, a summary of the topic. For the moderator, you are yet to confirm it, but I will be the charge moderator. You have speakers like Dr. Lak. Sorry for the name. Okay, for the international organization and scope for another international organization, we have to we confirm it later. And for business, we have Mr. Waf. And we need a speaker from UNCTAD. You have academia, NOAA, and another academia, Najal. And just for the technical community, planning for civil society, and NEMA for civil society. For the rapporteurs, you have Adama, former MAG member, June, former MAG member. The plan for participating engagement, you have a caption of presentation and discussion, online moderation, and question and answer session. For the facilitator, we are yet to confirm it. And what you'll be looking at for as outputs will be an explanation for the reason significance of inclusion and human rights in societal debate and public awareness, the new risk emerging since the pandemic, the using new opportunity offered by the digital technology and the internet for positive change. And the last part, we have the role of IGF in promoting economic and social inclusion and human rights. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Afi. Anyone else want to contribute to the proposal? Lucien, and any comments and questions and additions? Lucien, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lucien Castex for Zero Codes. Just posted on the chat, but it could be interesting to discuss it. Why not Michelle Bachelet, which is United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, which could have great insights on the topic. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good idea, and she's also from the Global South, and so that's a good suggestion. And I think it's interesting that you've got this pandemic focus, and you might want to even strengthen that as a kind of a entry point for the session. Any other additions? Any comments or questions? I cannot see the queue, but please do just use the chat to say if you want to add or suggest something. I think what is nice about your session is that you've got quite common everyday questions that you are asking. You know, I like those questions about why is there such increased awareness, such a heightened concern about, in fact, it made me think even, people are talking now about the internet destroying democracy, for example. And that is a debate that might not really have been the case 5 years ago. And the fact that more and more ordinary people are asking questions about whether the internet is good for the world or bad for the world. To use that, I think, is quite a nice idea, and to not make it too complex or too technical, but then to have really good debate about this and about how the pandemic is really, revealing this the fact that the being able to have access to social and economic rights needs the internet. So it's I think you need to do a bit more work, but I like the direction in which you're going. I think it responds quite well to what the community have asked as well. Do you have any specific needs at this point in time from the MAG and the Secretariat?
Yes, we need a facilitator, one moderator, and one speaker.
Okay, so we need to send suggestions for moderators and speakers, and then any other comments that anyone has. I'm just checking if there's anyone here in the online members who want to. Ben has his hand up. Ben, please go ahead.
Very sorry, that is an old hand, and I will lower it now. Thank you.
I thought you would be able to come up with something important to say, Ben, so you've disappointed me. Anyone else, any further comments for this group? Okay, so Afi, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone who's worked on this with you. Yes, it needs a bit more work, but you're getting there. Deadline, 15 October. And I think just to you, but it applies to the other groups as well, try to keep your session description, at least the first paragraph of it, short enough so that it works well in a schedule and it works well for the purpose of promoting the session. Juliana, are you ready to go? Great, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, colleagues. This is after yesterday presentation. I think we come with some improvement on policy question and good suggestion on the speakers for the session. There's something we need to define the brief description and title, but we will work later. For the policy question, we come up with some idea about the environmental impacts, e-waste and ICT supply chains, how effective the potential of multi-stakeholder community to advance policy making in environmental sustainability and digitalization sector, and how to make sure that data positivity impact sustainable. The future of environmental issue related to data technology, and about the data governance. We still need time to discuss which is if we're working on the specific issue or we will work and more broad issue on the main session. For the moderator, there is suggestion to get help from Michael Ogia. And from the speakers, we have quite good suggestion from the colleagues. There is some from EU Commission, from UNEP, from Hackathon, from UNFCCC, from the government, from the government of Berlin and Nigerian Youth SDG, from academia, and from private sector there's from Netflix and Microsoft. The output is we want to sustain work in this issue in the future IGF and that have good impact in the policymaker as well as the best practice. Yeah, and as we mentioned yesterday, we will working closely with the PNA working group. As the Florina here maybe she want to has some input and to this document. Thank you.
Thanks, Juliana. Any comments or additions? I'm a bit worried that you might be covering too many issues. And I think that's what you need to worry. Because on the one hand, you want to have a focus on the governance of environmental data. That's obviously a theme. But yes, I think you just need to be careful about not covering too many. I think it's better to cover one aspect or one issue area really thoroughly than trying to skim, too thinly. That's my only comment at this point.
I understand there's too much aspect in the policy question, and we will need to discuss whether we will focus on some issue to make the discussion on main session is more meaningful and more good for the others for the result.
Thanks very much, Juliana. Anyone else with any comments for this group? And Florina, you are collaborating with Juliana and the team on this. I think it's quite a nice idea to also, it's a way also to make more people aware of the policy networks and what they are doing. But I think you've got great speakers, but again, they come from very different. They have different areas of expertise, so you might want to relook at your speakers once you've decided what your priority focus area is. You've got fantastic speakers, but they're very diverse in terms of their specialities, but very good speakers. So everyone, no comments further for Juliana and the environment team. You clearly have a bit more work to do, but you've got the 2 weeks. But really, this is the last deadline. We can't extend this deadline further, everyone. So it's hard work, these main sessions. Next, and our final, unless I've forgotten someone, digital cooperation. Suki is not with us. Adam, are you able to take us through digital cooperation, or is there someone else?
I'm not, sorry.
I'm just checking if there's anyone online. Is there anyone who can take us through the digital cooperation proposal?
And we haven't had a chance to actually talk with New York.
That's a good idea. So I don't see anyone, and that might not be a bad thing, because that gives the MAG members who are leading the preparation of this digital cooperation issue area session to check in with UNDESA and people in the SG's office on how to collaborate on this focus on the common agenda. But I think there was a very good discussion. Adam did yesterday. I had asked him to email his suggestion to the mailing list, and he did, and Suki, who's leading this, has responded. So there is actually in the background a very dynamic discussion going on about this main session. So it's not as if nothing has been done, but again, we need to finalize this in 2 weeks. But my sense is, Adam, that there is agreement that we can focus on the common agenda. Am I right?
I believe so, yes. Sorry, it's
good.
Adam Peake speaking.
Good.
And I think that was one of the reasons I suggested it. This working group has sort of lost track, and this gives us not only a very timely and relevant topic, but it also gives us one to focus on in an easier way. And I think your suggestion to work with with UNDESA is a very good one. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Adam. Have we covered all the main session proposals? Okay, thanks. So before we close on this, I've mentioned the deadline of the 15th. I just wanted the Secretariat to get an opportunity. I mean, Eleonora, from a communications perspective, are there any pointers that you want to give the MAG members that you'd like them to consider as they finalize their proposals?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing immediately comes to mind, I picked up on your comment to keep the description nice and short and reader friendly. I mean, that's good advice for everyone. But other than that, if the Secretariat thinks of some things that can be done to improve the proposals or the descriptions that are going to be posted, then we will reach out and speak to the organizers.
Thanks, Eleonora. And then remember, when you finalize your speaker selection, they do not have to be English speaking or fluent in English. There is interpretation available in UN languages for the main sessions, so you can have people who would speak in Spanish or Portuguese or Spanish or Russian or French, for example, and they do not have to be physically present, so you can do what Adam suggested yesterday, which is, take advantage of the fact that you don't have to pay a business class ticket for important people or people who see themselves as important, but also keep in mind that it is also about diversity and perspective. So don't only go for high-profile speakers for the sake of it. It is good to have someone to attract attention to the IGF, but also try and get people who can speak meaningfully and from experience on the issues. So you don't have a lot of time, and we really do need to finalize this. So we'll, at the next MAG call, we'll have finalized this. So I think that is it on that agenda item. So everyone, thank you very much for the work on the main session proposals, and wishing you, good luck. Don't wait to really meet early next week. You still have quite a lot of work to do, so don't delay in getting back to work on these. Next, we're going to hear from the Secretariat on the plans that are currently available for the main sessions being organized by the NRIs, and the sessions they're not main sessions, but the dynamic coalitions at NRIs are organizing main sessions, and then the best practice forums and the policy networks are also organizing sessions. So, Anya, can you start us with that, please? Just before you start, I want to just give, why this is important for the MAG to listen to these session proposals, even though you're not directly involved in them. Because as a MAG, you are responsible for organizing the program for the 2021 IGF. And so, in fact, you have a degree of accountability and a role to ensure that there's a coherence and value and interest in the overall program of the IGF. So even if you are not directly responsible for these main sessions, it's important that you're aware of what they are going to cover, so that can contribute to your thinking and planning. Anya.
Yes, thank you very much. I'll give an update on the status of preparations of the NRIs of their main session. So the NRIs, as Mag will know, they run a bottom-up call for thematic inputs to ensure that the consensus-based view on what the topic for the main session of the agenda reflects everyone. And based on that call, it was decided by the NRIs in a consultative process that their main session will focus on access to the internet and digital inclusion, with specific focus on the role of the internet during the COVID-19 pandemic, especially looking at good and bad practices of the use of the internet, and in that sense, the status of public digital policy. Now, there are a couple of versions, working versions for the title. Such, for example, is the good, the bad, and the ugly of the internet during the pandemic, but we're still struggling a little bit to understand the consensus-based view of the NRIs on the title. But in any case, there is the understanding with the NRIs that we have to comply with the deadline of the 15th of October, so a full proposal will be submitted by that time to also to the MAG and for the schedule. In terms of the issue areas which are associated with the planning of the NRI's main session, certainly that will be the universal access and meaningful connectivity. It is expected it will reflect on economic and social inclusion and human rights, but also on inclusive internet governance ecosystem. The purpose of the NRI's main session, as always, has been to bring perspectives of communities which are gathered around the NRI processes. So it's going to focus on as concrete as possible issues, good practices, but also not good practices that exist on the NRI levels. And the moderator always has a challenging role to give us a summary in terms of how the global ecosystem looks like from the perspective of the NRIs. We're going to have a next meeting in around 2 weeks from now. And that next meeting will serve to finalize the policy questions on this thematic focus that I've just presented, but primarily to understand what could be the format of this session. And of course, the MAG's advice in that very creative brainstorming activity is always most welcome. That's as much as I can say. Maybe just a quick note that the NRI's main session, in order to streamline quite a number of planning processes that exist with the NRIs, as you know, there are technically 7 sessions we're planning. There is the task force, which is formed of the interested NRIs to come up with a proposal based on the input of all the NRIs. And this methodology is applied for the very first time this year. And of course, we're going to, the Secretariat will also feed the inputs from today's meeting to the NRIs to ensure that there are no overlaps, meaning the thematic overlaps between the issue area main sessions which are planned by the MAG and the NRI's main session. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anya. Any questions for Anya? No. And I mean, Anya, I just have one question, and I think you've actually covered it as well. But my sense has been that the NRIs have been very responsive to these efforts to integrate with the work that's done by the MAG. They've been very cooperative, I have felt. Is that true?
Yes, I join and confirm for sure. I think the NRIs were very cooperative and they welcomed the new issue-driven approach that was developed by the MAG and tried to comply. It's been, from experience, saying that it's been the most difficult year to understand the consensus in terms of the thematic focus of all the NRIs, probably because of the shift caused by the pandemic in terms of the priorities on the local levels in digital public policy.
Yes. I think that's an important reflection, actually, for the future. Because if the MAG wants to both be single-issue focused, more focused, narrower, but also integrate with the NRIs, you know, these might also be difficult to achieve because you want to also give the NRIs the space to focus on their own priority areas. But the lessons will be shared at a later stage. Serena, do you have an update from the dynamic coalitions on their main session?
Thank you, Henriette. Marcus has covered this yesterday, but I can repeat quickly what he said then. We're still working with dynamic coalitions on planning the main session. I'm not sure we will have it ready by 15th of October, but doing our best to at least come up with a more concrete proposal. The idea would be to focus the main session on 2 main issues. The first one, building a bit on the paper we presented the other day, to look at how DCs can contribute to advancing digital cooperation efforts and to building a more strategic and impactful IGF. And then the second part, to look at connections between DC work and the IGF 2021 issue areas, but specifically what they're doing or planning to do around these things. Now we're doing a bit of a mapping exercise to see how DC work is connected with the issue areas, and based on this, we would probably identify a few policy questions to go through during the session. Marcus, if there's anything you'd like to add? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Serena. We have covered this as well. And so, I mean, on the BPFs, both you and Wim presented the draft tables of contents or the outlines, the structures of your thematic reports. Do you have anything to add on the BPF sessions, or do you feel it's been covered?
On the BPF sessions, it's relatively simple. The BPFs are working on their documents as I presented yesterday. Normally, the documents will be ready in a draft version ahead of the IGF, so that the community at least has some time to read. And the sessions themselves will be used to get back to the documents. What is typically done at BPF sessions is not just presenting the document, but trying to focus on one of the part of the documents and have some high-level speakers so that even some input from the session itself can be added to the final document. So there is no concrete plan for the session, but all will follow from the work that comes the next weeks.
And Serena, I assume that applies. I think well, certainly, Serena, you're not doing BPF this year. I think the important thing for the MAG to keep in mind, as Wim says, is that those sessions are validation sessions, really, and you present the report, you get further input, you get a sense of where the BPF, what's been missed if there are really gaps. Sorry, there's an open mic somewhere. So for the MAG members that are the facilitators of those BPFs, but as well as other MAG members that are concerned with the outputs of those BPFs, go to those sessions. They really are. They are the opportunity for the community to look at what the BPF has done and feed into it, because the consultants will then produce the final versions of those reports after the fact. So I think policy networks, Raquel, Florina, you've already talked a bit about your planned recommendations and reports. Do you have anything to add on the sessions that you are organizing? Florina, you go first.
Yes, I have prepared a document that I can share with you. IGF Secretariat will stop sharing. Okay. So you should be able to see it. So So I have prepared some notes on the planned P&E session. I've adjusted the template that I've seen the main sessions to, so I hope that's fine. Obviously, we also have 90 minutes. The description of the session I've put there. So basically, what we want to do in these 90 minutes is to present our draft report. It will still be a draft report at that stage, because the idea is that we can really implement or also take up the inputs that we get from that session. So I've just reiterated what the goal of our report is and basically, the goal of this session is that we invite an interested public to engage with the co-authors of the report, who will be present in the session, with input and comments being integrated into the final version of the report after the IGF 2021. And the objective is really to stimulate engagement of this wider public who is interested in this nexus of environmental sustainability and digitalization with the P&E, and to engage in a discussion on the proposed policy recommendations. We address various SDGs. It will be more in detail in the report. We'll point them out if it makes sense. The speakers in our session will be, the moderator. I will moderate the session. We will have the P&E co-chairs, so Projemic. As you all know, we have also Catherine and Daniel, so we have 3 co-chairs of the P&E, and we have the workstream facilitators. And here I've drafted an agenda. This is yet to be confirmed by the P&E community or P&E work group, but this is just the draft that I've kind of sketched out. So I want to have a little welcome and introduction to the P&E, so a bit of an overview of why it was created and what the goals are, and then obviously the presentation of the policy recommendations done by the workstream leads, ideally, or other reps from those work streams. And since we only have 90 minutes, so my idea would be that we really plan in for an engagement with the public and with the people who attend that session. So after a quick presentation or explanation of the thought process behind the policy recommendations, I would like to do some form of breakout so that we can break out into groups on these different topical areas and receive feedback and feedback and further notice on these policy recommendations. And also what I've been thinking the the last couple of days, kind of how can we strengthen this link to policy. Obviously, we are a policy network, so the idea is that these policy recommendations go from recommendation to implementation. It will this is the big challenge and will be for next year probably, and I think it would be nice to have some input on that question to really make it more relevant, to get some input on how can we move from policy recommendation to implementation. On this, I've also commented in the main session that it would maybe be nice to already prelude to this link, to strengthen this aspect of policy, to maybe invite someone who's an expert on policy making to really stimulate a discussion on policy making within the IGF, and to then follow up in this PNE session, and then obviously have a synthesis in the end, a quick summary of what has been discussed, and also to quickly kind of indicate what the future of the PNE could look like and encourage participation in that process as well.
Thanks a lot, Florina. Does anyone have any comments or questions? It's very unfair to have you so late. You know, people are exhausted. But thanks for that well-prepared presentation. Raquel, do you have anything to add to the...
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, I need to congratulate Florina for the great work. I honestly have been a pleasure to work with her, also seeing the synergies between the policy networks. But I would like to see if Roberto Zambrana, or my colleague, one of the MAG liaisons for the PNME, he was ready to make a few more notes on as we evolved with the main session, the PNME main session. Roberto?
I'm actually trying not to because of the, as you said, jet lag. Well, I just wanted to repeat what I said before, and I think it will be great to join this effort. Raquel is doing a great job coordinating the PNMA network. It's as we all know, we have gathered a very great group of people, experts in the different areas that have very strong voice in their different areas of development. So they are actually going to be very influent. It will be the first time that we are actually working with a policy network. It's not, I don't think it's an experiment anymore. I think it's here to stay for the future. But one particular thing that we need to do, and I also mentioned it before, is that we need to evaluate. We are always commenting the lack of following up about all the different discussions that we have during the several years that the IGF have been with us. And it will be a very good opportunity in this particular very important area, which is universal access, to actually see if all these previous recommendations, and this time not only from the last year, but from the different years, because this particular subject was discussed before several times. I think before the pandemic, what the problem was that perhaps we all thought that it was some kind solved. I think it's something that some other colleagues mentioned before. But the pandemic showed us that it's not. So it's an ongoing issue, a very important issue to solve. The Secretary General gave us the mandate as one of the first and more important parts. So I think the PNMA is going to provide a very strong joint voice, not only as we usually did with policy recommendations, but with actual actions regarding policy. So that's pretty much that we wanted to mention, and I thank Raquel again for doing this job, and perhaps she also wants to do something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto. Raquel, anything to add?
Yes, and thank you very much, Roberto. Just that I hope you can see in the screen. This is the more evolved version for the main session and connecting, as was said several times, with the universal and meaningful connectivity issue main session. The members that are listed here are also the speakers that are listed here are also members of the PNME multi-stakeholder working group that have been very active in sharing their expertise and also in pushing for this policy implementation. So it's the time to do something. I also would like to invite if Giacomo or Corinne had any other comments, or Carlos Afonso, I'm sorry. We've added everything in this joint document. And as Anya was presenting, I also took note of the topic for the NIR main session. And I believe that's also important to include them or look for the synergies to bring them together and be as inclusive as possible in this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. Are there any questions? I'm checking in the chat. There was, and Florina has thanked him, a comment about connecting a link, connecting the policy network on the environment with discussions at COP26. And so that connection, I think, is being made. And there's recognition of Anya's work with NRIs and how effective that has been. And I must say, we've also had really, Serena, you've been thanked for your work with the dynamic coalitions, and Wim, your work with the best practice forums, and Raquel and Florina. So I think really a huge thank you to the Secretariat, who are working with these external communities. It's really, you are the glue that's holding this bigger IGF ecosystem together, and you're doing it really well. So thank you very much, and I think we should all give you a big hand. So on that note, I believe that Serena and Wim have prepared musical production for us with some song and dance on IGF 2021 outputs, interpretive dance, and the interpretive dance will be done by Shangatai, is that correct? And you now have the final presentation of the day. So everyone, you have to wake up, because this is about IGF 2021 outputs.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the highlight of the day, the part on outputs. We will be short, hopefully, but yeah, happy to take any questions afterwards. We've prepared some very, very basic slides trying to show a bit how this whole development of output at the IGF 2021 would work. And starting with the preparatory phase, and as you said, Henriette, based on the discussions we had the previous days, the idea would be that sessions being held throughout the entire preparatory and engagement phase would be reflected in the pre-meeting guide, building on the experience from last year as well, and of course in the wikis. And that would be a sort of a shared task between the Secretariat and the MAG members who have kindly volunteered to help with the wikis. And on that note, thank you to the MAG members who have volunteered for that. So that's overall for all the sessions in the preparatory phase. Wim, if we can move. And then there's a bit of a special treatment, if I may call it like that, for the introductory sessions, which are being prepared by MAG issue teams. And this is also building on what has been discussed yesterday. And I think Timea made very good input there. They would be developing reports, summaries, we call them briefing, out of the introductory sessions. And this would then feed into the recap session that we're still seeing how we would put into the schedule of IGF 2021 at the beginning of the meeting. And that would be another way in which outputs of the introductory sessions would feed into the IGF 2021. And this is in addition to what was shown on the previous slides about the pre-meeting guide and the wikis. And that's about the preparatory phase. Moving to the full IGF meeting in December, it's more or less the same process as before. We just tried to make it more clear here on this slide, and I hope that's clear for everyone. So we have all the sessions, which session organizers will summarize ideally in key takeaways, and Wim and I are working on a simplified reporting template and guidelines on what we actually mean by key takeaways. So hopefully that would be helpful for session organizers so they have a better idea of what exactly we are expecting from them. And then all of that would then be put together by us, the Secretariat, into the usual messages we have been developing also in previous years. And then, of course, at the end of the IGF, we have the summary, the chair summary, which would be including not only messages, but also references to all other types of IGF outputs, which you see on the other side of the screen. And that's the overall process. And I'll pass it to Wim for the more in-depth explanation on the session reporting.
Okay, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I don't have my dancing shoes with me. So, before moving to the next slide, I just wanted to add one thing to what Serena just said. As I noticed, the discussion yesterday was there were a lot of ideas, and I think it might also be helpful to really make the difference between what we mean with IGF 2021 outputs and what is the other side of this slide is actually the thinking of, okay, we need to try to summarize everything that has happened in a way that it's more easy to present. And that's then more the task of the session, the key takeaways, moving into the summary. But if you, and I would suggest that the mic also takes on, if you refer to outputs of IGF 2021, that are actually everything that's on the right hand of the slide. And if you remember last year, this was also presented as such on the IGF website. And even the year before, there was one page that said IGF outputs, and there it was clearly listed all the different types of documents that came out of IGF 2020 and 2019 that was. Now, just going to not going back, but going forward, to what we are working on in terms of easier templates and I would even say reduced work for session organizers and the Secretariat, and trying to reduce to make process simpler and easier for the reporting. Also keeping the words from just before the lunch break in our mind that new processes shouldn't add work but try to reduce work. So the idea is the session organizers will be asked to produce a very short output document that only focuses on 1, 2, maximum 3 very focused key takeaways within 2 hours of the session. This would then feed into this would then be published on the website and would also feed in the overall set of messages. This should be kept very, very short and very focused. That's why we suggest that this is done within 2 hours after the meeting. And that replaces then the first report last year that had to be submitted within the 12 hours. Then in return or in addition, we ask the session organizers to spend a bit more time on their actual report or the actual summary of their session, and asked to submit that no later than 2 weeks after the session, so that can be compiled in the complete set of outputs of the BPF. By giving a little bit more time, we would expect that the rapporteur for the session has more time to reach out to the other teams, other members of the organizing team for this session, to come up with a more detailed description of the discussion itself, including a point we picked up yesterday or 2 days ago, the importance of also reflecting what was said in the chat during the meeting. In addition to that, a point that also came up yesterday, I think, As not everybody will be able to follow the meetings and provide immediately content, there should also be a way to receive or give an opportunity for people that listen to recordings during the night or during their breakfast as they're in the other time zone. So by giving a bit more time for that final report, we would expect, or we ask the session organizers and the rapporteurs also to reflect that in their report. And then also the final report is the moment when the typically question about the gender participation or gender report card in the session, about the session could be added, because also this year this is more complex than others as we have a hybrid model. It will be a number or a reflection on who was in the room, but should also try to give some input on who was also following. That's the overview. I hope that it is more simple and a nice way to end and go with a big smile back home.
Thanks very much. Can you just go back to the pyramid slide, please? I think what I just want to highlight, I think what this slide makes very clear is what we talked about yesterday on attribution, that the takeaways and the session reports are the words of the session organizers. And the session organizers it's very clear that it's their voice. We hope that they are as inclusive and objective as they can be in representing the different opinions and views that were shared in the session, but they are the authors of that. And then the messages are produced by the Secretariat based on the session organizers' key takeaways. And then finally, the chair's summary is authorized, if not just produced, by the chair, which is the host country chair, not the MAG chair. People often get confused. And that then becomes the most comprehensive record of the event. So it's I think it, and I mean the outputs are there, and I know people complain that there are multiple outputs, and it makes it difficult. But at the same time, if you look at the multiplicity of voices and actors that are involved in organizing the IGF, I think it's very hard to get away from having these different outputs that then are attributed to different processes and people. But thank you very much for your work on that and for integrating the discussion yesterday. Any comments or questions for the Secretariat on this presentation? Who has a hand up? I'm looking at the... Giacomo.
Yes, a practical question for Wim and Serena is, when you say that you give 2 weeks for the report, it means that you will have first an immediate report, short report as it is today, and then they can make a final version within 2 weeks, or we will have only the final report after 2 weeks? Because the problem is, especially if you need to integrate elements from various plenary and sessions, etc., in the other reports, probably you need to have 2 versions of the same document available. One immediately, that is for the communication purposes, the media, etc., and the other one is for a more reflected discussion.
If I may answer. Well, the idea is that actually there is no first report anymore. So the short report is replaced by just and only the key takeaways. And if that is, personally, if that is 2 sentences that really capture a strong message that came out of the session, That's even better than having like 3 long paragraphs describing the session. So the idea is that within 2 hours or even immediately after the session organizer says that this was the most relevant point that came out of our discussion. And all the other elements, giving more flavor to what was discussed, giving more background, giving more differentiation in opinions, is expected in the summary report, which is also expected to be the summary report of the discussion, and not just a copy and paste of the session description. I hope that's helpful.
Giacomo, okay.
For instance, if we go, it doesn't seem the case this year, but if we go for focusing on some issues during the IGF, and this will be the one on which we need to have more in-depth report, we need to have both tools, not for eventually for all the events that are hosted within the IGF, but at least for those that, let's say, artificial intelligence, for those you need both, and not in forms of a few phrases. Because if not, all the process will be delayed for a long time. Because if you have to wait for 2 weeks before to have the document, then when you will produce the in-depth analysis of what came out. We're talking about the future, of course.
No, just a quick reaction. Actually, it doesn't have. Nobody is obliged to wait that long. I mean, if a session organizer or a session team wants to have its report ready on a shorter term, and maybe that's a suggestion. If it's like 1 week or less time, I think what we want to avoid, and that's also something we saw from experience, that the session report is something that's on the shoulders of one person. And that one person has like a very limited amount of time to put something together on paper, and some of the other people involved don't have the time because they have other sessions. So instead of curating that same situation just by putting pressure, we try to give a little bit more time for the substantive report, so that more people can be involved. But it doesn't have to be 2 weeks. I mean, that just seemed realistic. But if it's 1 week is enough, but we just wanted to avoid the situation that people feel the pressure and that you see the report is one person's work who just made something quick, and then often the second longer report is just a small addition to what was already there and not a substantive longer report.
Thanks for that, woman, Giacomo. There's also a question from Wout. Wout, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Henriette, for the opportunity as non-MEC member. One question, I know that the IGF Plus model is not there yet, but we have heard of really substantive potential outcomes of this IGF. Has any thought been given to reaching out more directly to several stakeholder groups, because the pyramid I saw is more or less the same as it has been in the past 2 years, and we want to attract the right specialists and experts in the process for 2022, my guess is. So how are we foreseeing to reach them and to make sure that they participate in 2022 cycle? Thank you very much.
Wout, I think to some extent that was covered by the communication strategy that Amado and the MAG working group and Eleonora presented earlier today. I think we also need to keep in mind that what Women's Arena just presented are the outputs that are produced through the host country and Secretariat supported processes. I think there can be other outputs as well. There are the Diplo session summaries, which are up very quickly and which people use, and then different stakeholder groups. I know ICC Basis often publishes their debrief on the IGF. Groups like the Association for Progressive Communications do an IGF reflection. So I think we also need to keep in mind that they cannot do everything. What they can do is to provide the raw material, which can be used as both the official record, and also inform other people's perspectives. So I know I'm not answering you entirely, but I think we also need to look at how we have to have clarity in terms of the record and the attribution and the type of documents, the type of outputs documents that are produced, because without clarity at that level, you cannot then really build a dynamic communications and outreach strategy. So I think your point is valid, and I think it needs to be undertaken as part of the process of implementing this communications and outreach strategy. So, but I think it's part of what the plan is. So Eleonora, I'm not sure if you wanted to comment on that, but that definitely is part of the longer term strategy, what I heard this morning.
No comment from me, thank you, Chair. But yeah, Wout's feedback is well noted.
Thanks, Eleonora. So everyone, if there are no further questions, we are finishing early, which is very commendable. I'm just doing a final check of the chat and the hands. There's a comment just to find the way to translate the final messages for users in understandable and simple language. The idea of having a drafting committee. The idea of a drafting committee was actually raised. That's what the Asia Pacific Regional IGF does. At this point in time, that's not part of the IGF process, but that comment has been made, and I think it will probably be considered for the future. And there is nothing further at this point. Adam, you have asked for the floor. So
I have again. Sorry, Adam Peake for the record. Yes, 9 weeks away from the IGF, start of the IGF, I believe. So a question that I think would be helpful for me to know. Could we find out how many MAG members intend to attend the IGF in person? I think intention rather than absolute certainty is probably what we can go on at this stage, but who intends to go, it would be helpful. And something I mentioned at the start of the meeting, if we could have the information about the COVID measures that will be in place both for the Blue Zone venue and the venue as a whole, and any information about the COVID measures generally in Poland would be helpful. Everything that would be helpful to, make sure that we are able to travel. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for chairing the meeting, Henriette. It was wonderful.
Thank you very much, Adam. Shangatai, can you please respond?
Thank you very much, Adam. For your first question, I would ask MAG members who are going to who have the intention of coming just to put a little note in the chat. I think that's the easiest. If you're not, please don't. But if you do intend to come, just say a yes or a +1 in the chat, and then we can do a quick count. I think that'll be good. But I do also urge everybody, please register in advance. We had some MAG members even coming here and they had not registered. It would really, really help us. It would really, really help the host country if everybody registered as soon as they can. And then that will help us, especially with the visa issues and the COVID certificates and all that stuff. I think that is very helpful. As far as the measures are concerned, there is some information on the website. We did have some discussions when Shemek was here. He was having some discussions with our DSS, Department of Safety and Security. So there will be some more updated information on the Polish website about the COVID measures, probably end of next week. So, but then again, this information is going to be continuously updated, and it's going to be fuller and fuller as we go towards the IGF 2021 meeting, because as you all know, it is a moving situation, and there is always updates, hopefully for the better and not rolling back. But please do check time and time again. If there's anything that is outright, we will try and also put it in our newsletter. But yes.
Thanks very much, Shangatai. And Adam, I hope you that was sufficient for you. I think we just have to accept that we'll be dealing with continuous information on this. There's a request that everyone indicates in the chat of the WebEx interface, the MAG members, if they're going to be attending. Thanks to those of you who have done that already. But, you know, Shangatai, I think we should have more information on that really soon. I think rather than take too seriously what we have, we don't have all the MAG members present in this meeting. I think there is a strong indication that many MAG members will be there. We also know that some are constrained and might not be able to be there. And that is why we are having a hybrid IGF. MAG members, observers, Secretariat, friends and family of all genders, I think this is the end of this meeting. The next steps, the most important, immediate next step, is for the issue teams, the MAG members, to complete their main session proposals. And I think do that with fresh energy. I think you've done really good work. Be open, look at what the community input was, think of how those sessions can be entertaining and interesting and dynamic. And we'll see your final proposals on the 15th of October. Friday, the 15th of October, which means that by the time we have the next MAG call, we can start looking at how they'll be displayed and promoted. And the next MAG call will be on?
It's going to be on the 19th, Tuesday the 19th.
Tuesday, 19 October. So I'd like to thank everyone for being in this meeting, for bearing with us through the hybrid format. To our virtual participants who have probably tried to multitask but be in the MAG meeting and in different time zones, to those who got up early in the morning and those who stayed up late. Thanks to the transcribers. They are incredible and invaluable to us, and we haven't had interpreters, but we've had our transcribers. And the WebEx team, the UN Palais WebEx team, thank you very much for your support. And then to the Secretariat, who has, as always, patiently and diligently supported the process and provided the technical support and all the conceptual and administrative support that we need. And Pascal, that includes you. Thank you for your support to get those of us who traveled from far away here. So thanks very much, everyone. Shangatai, do you have any closing remarks?
And I'll just like to echo our chair's words. Thank you very much. And also, if you have any problems trying to find some panelists for your main sessions, please do contact us. We do have a list of VIP guests that we could recommend for you, for your panelists. We are getting more and more confirmations each day from the VIPs that we have invited to come in, and they may be very, very willing to, come onto your panel for their main session. With that, I would also like to say a very big thank you to our chair as well for these 3 days. I think She did a very, very great job, and she needs a hand. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It's a collective effort.
Yeah.
I think it's easier, Amadu. I think what Shengatai is saying, because they've got a list, they've got records. It's easier for the Secretariat if MAG members ask them and say to them, "We need somebody from that part of the world, or from that stakeholder group, or from that sectoral area." Then it's easier for them to go and look at all their different. There's a database, but they also have records from past high-level sessions, and so I think it's easier for them if you ask them, and then they'll provide some suggestions. It's not one database. The meeting is now closed. You can go away and have fun.